Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. As always, this is where we gather every single day to help anyone and everyone learn about modern web-based production. If you have questions, this is what drives our show. So anything about media creation and distribution in all its forms, we handle these questions 24/7. And this way, you can put them into the system whenever you think of them. And then in the morning, we kind of go through everything, not only those that are put in through the Mukana system, which is kind of the back-end thing where you can not just put in your questions, but vote on those questions and kind of help us drive the show content. But also, if you want to, you can use the QR code system. And when you use the QR code system by either capturing or, whoops, I'm sorry about that. I had things set wrong. Let me just do that again. There we go. This QR code will allow you to shoot that with your phone or your tablet or whatever and get into the quick system, which allows you to put your questions in kind of in real time. Someone will check them out on the back end and then put them into the show. So that's how we drive this discussion every day. That's the rules of everything. Now we're going to dive into our questions. So, Alexander, what's our first question for this morning?
Our first question this morning is from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Discuss JVC's new 12-channel vMix studio switcher with NDI, SRT, and SDI support and how it will compete with other products in this category.
And Guy Cochran's going to start us off this morning. Guy, what do you think?
Yeah, this isn't new. This has been out for a while. It is nice to see a major brand like this integrating everything all in one, because what can happen with PCs in particular is components not playing well with each other. So because on the Mac side, we have everything all from one manufacturer, but in the PC world, as you know, there's different graphics cards, different drivers, updates, things like that can actually cause some issues. So getting it all from one place means that it's all certified. These things can get long in the tooth, though, really quick when they come through the channel like this. US Broadcast has some. There's a couple other manufacturers. Wirecast has done the same model in the past. And what happens is these things get old. And Puget Systems is somebody that I would recommend as somebody that certifies and can have higher-end components inside. So I would take a look at Puget Systems. Go directly against JVC's specs, because you might get a faster graphics card, more RAM, things like that. So it's a great package, though, of somebody like a church that just wants to call it a day. You've got HDMI, you've got NDI, you've got SRT. It all just works out of the box. And if you spec it in, especially some of these places that it takes a year to push a purchase order through, it could be a great solution, especially if you love that brand and that's the cameras that you use.
Courtney, what do you think?
Yeah, it looks like they're going after new tech, really. It's a rack mount dedicated PC with a graphics card, and they licensed vMix from vMix to use as the operating system for its switcher. They also have let's see if I can find a picture of it down here somewhere. There's a control surface that looks very much like a more professional switcher, kind of like a NewTek's switcher. I can't find it in the video here, but anyway, it's a decent looking control surface that has backlighted buttons, clear plastic buttons, etc. So it looks like they're going after the NewTek market for houses of worship, for corporate, for that type of. I don't know what the price is on it. I don't know. Maybe Guy knows what the price is on it to package it all as an all-in-one with a license. And I don't know how well they're going to keep the hardware up to date. But if it has the state-of-the-art NVIDIA, graphics card in there, like a 4070 or 4090, it'll stay, at least pertinent for at least a couple or 3 years.
Alexander Knight?
Yeah, like Courtney said, good points there. A pre-configured system, turnkey, ready to go. That it's going to be stable and especially if you don't know how to build your own computers. That's a good idea. Nothing against turnkey systems. My only question is, how good is the customer service and tech support? If you need something, if there's a problem, how hard can they get you? Can they just expedite a replacement component to you? So those are all questions that I would be concerned about. I would probably prefer myself, if I were to go with a turnkey system, go with probably a smaller local company or a company where I know they have excellent support, where if I'm going to reach out to them, I can get a human being right away on the phone. So I don't really know that much about JVC. So that would be my only question. Other than that, pre-configured to their specs, should be pretty stable.
Guy, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, they have some sharp cats over at JVC. I've done some work with those guys. Shout out to Edgar Shane. He really knows his stuff on the SRT front as far as even being able to set latency settings. And there's some encryption things that you could do. He has a setup in his office where you could log into 3 different cameras and move them around. So they're well versed in this technology. I think that the company that they're going after more than just new tech would be Panasonic with the Kairos line. But Kairos, in the last years, we saw at IBC has really pushed the bar to the limits by implementing 2110. So already, like I said, these things come out, they get certified before going out, and then they just get long in the tooth really quick. So unless you've got innovators that are at the cutting edge, this stuff just, it's hard to put it on the shelf because it's literally going to be obsolete by the time it hits the shelf. So take a look at the Panasonic Kairos. Those things are in the 50 grand range, though. They're even above and beyond what NewTek's doing. So if you're searching for this kind of stuff, take a look there.
Courtney?
Yeah, and I did find a picture of the control surface, but I wonder too, like was mentioned earlier, since you're using vMix as basically the engine inside this piece of hardware, who are you going to call when you have a problem? Is it vMix that's a problem? Is it JVC? Is it the integration between the two? They might end up pointing fingers at each other. I don't know who's going to handle those service calls, whether JVC is going to take that on to support them wholly, including all the vMix bugs or problems.
Paul, thanks for the question. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's asking, at the Paris Olympics, France Televisions coordinated coverage from their mobile unit UM1 outside their HQ. How might they have interfaced the truck with the building, avoiding Dante and 2110 clocking issues?
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, Mickey said that there's no clocking issues at all in the large private fiber network, no Dante, as it does not work well and is more difficult to manage in a large complex networks. For TV audio is transported to them over MADI, 2110 and some AES 67. Clocking issues are not present when network infra is configured appropriately. So I was going to answer, not with not nearly as much detail. So there you go. There's your answer there.
Yeah, that's a pretty authoritative answer. So there's your solution. Next question.
Next question is from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida, and he's asking, warning, typing quote, can cause the Apple mobile user interface called Springboard to crash. Looks like TechCrunch is reporting on this.
Jesse Kester, what do you think?
I think it absolutely can. Let's demo this. So you go into settings, go to your search bar, and colon. It doesn't have to be 2 colons. It can be colon anything. So I'm going to do 6, and you get a crash. That one's the light version of the crash. The light version is in settings, but if you go over to your app library search and do colon, you get a much more destructive reset. You don't lose the OS. What you're going to see in a moment is that the lock screen shows up. So it's not an extinction level event. It's just a little bit of a reset on your home screen.
And is that in
Somebody
17?
left some code in there they shouldn't have.
And Jesse, is that in 17?
I believe I'm using the newest version, though. If you give me a minute, I can figure that out.
16.7 maybe?
I couldn't get it to do it.
Aha.
That's why I asked. It's just colon. Oh, I did get it to do it. Never mind.
Colon,
I couldn't get it to do it in some of the other stuff, but I do
shot.
it in the app search. Mine just kind of dumps out for just a moment.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are not responsible for anything that happens to you based on what you just heard
We do
on
it
the
so
show.
you don't have to.
So
right.
mine just literally it flashed and was right back again. So it was just like it just kind of did like this little woo and then disappeared. It's some kind of interesting bug. I'm sure it has something to do with I don't know. It's probably doing some kind of process as it's trying to guess what's next, and it just ran off there's just something they hadn't thought of. I'm sure it'll be fixed in the next update.
Let's go to the next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is asking, RenderNet's narrator feature allows busy founders and creators to quickly create AI clones of themselves and create realistic videos narrating any script. Useful to you?
Alex?
No, I mean, no. Like it just, I can see lazy executives thinking that this would be a great way to replace it. They're really busy. They've got a lot of other things, but it's so important when you're doing these things to, you're trying to engage with your audience, you're engage with your customers, engage with your employees. And, if the AI is never going to they'll start relating to like, that's what you're like which is probably a little flatter than your normal version. Now, maybe for some executives, maybe this is a really good thing. Maybe they should, maybe they should use this instead of their own voice. But for the most part, I think that you wouldn't want to do that. If I have to do addresses, I mean, it takes me a long time just to get to something that I did by myself that I liked, let alone an AI tool doing it. So I would really recommend not using these. I think that people leaning on this too hard are going to pay a price of just disengagement, and it's really hard to get back once you've done it.
Jesse?
Yeah, if you don't have time to say it yourself, why would anyone make time to listen themselves?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about, I just want to say the quote that we use a lot here is that content is easy to make or it's easy to watch, but rarely both. And so that's and I think that's what you have to kind of take into account.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up with this and say the most important thing you have nowadays is personality. If you're projecting things out as a leader, people want to know about your authentic self. And if you're filtering it all through some AI-generated bot, they're not getting your effective self. They're getting some large language model's idea of what you're like. And that, to me, is not a smart move. Courtney?
Yeah, the advantages of these AI voice generators is not to clone your own voice unless you happen to be a great narrator voice like Bill or myself or anybody on this panel. It's to take advantage of the fact that your voice may not be up to par as a narrator. This works. You see this on a lot of YouTube videos for people who English is their second language and do not speak very fluent in the language that they want to use on their YouTube videos. So it conquers that problem. It's much better than trying to wade through understanding a person that speaks broken English, trying to speak English. So it has that advantage. I would not use, if I were one of those people that did not have English or whatever language you're publishing in Spanish as my first language, I would trust the AI over me in that case. But other than that, I'd rather narrate my own. That way I pronounce the names right, which is usually the dead giveaway that you're listening to an AI-generated track because it'll pronounce a well-known name incorrectly.
Next question.
Next one's from the QR code. Marielle, Jusha, Miera, and Woblo is asking, what's the quickest, easiest way to get a podium mic into Dante to a mixer?
Guy Cochran's going to start us off. Guy?
Yeah, when I was doing some research on mixers, I found RDL is actually recommended by a friend in Jeff Keithley's group. They are kind of pricey, but they are single-channel units, and you can get them. They look like this. We stopped by the booth at IBC and talked to these guys, and what I was surprised to see is they also have these, which are plates. So at our house of worship, this would probably fly better because of the way that I could mount this into the podium and then have the kids that come by when we're not around messing with things not be able to walk away with a little box. This could go, in the podium and then put a plate over the top and make it look nice. So that's probably what I would go for. And this is, again, the RDL line. You can find them online. I'll put a link in the chat.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, and another option would be the Studio Technologies mic line Dante interface. So this is the 5205, still pricey, $665, but for a lot of this type of thing, I'm coming to you through a 205 right now. So I'm a big fan of Studio Technologies hardware. It'll just work. So that would be the other one to look at.
Next question.
Another QR code question from Callum McCorkle in Bournemouth, Leeds. We've heard about Pantone colored Shure mics here on the show in the past and have seen them elsewhere. Where can we order Shure SM7, MV7, or the new SM4 in this kind of customized color profile to match our work style guides for our presenters?
Alex, do you know?
I don't know. That probably would have been good. I think this one did. I don't know whether this one came in yesterday for Laura or whether it was today. So this is a QR code, I believe, and I apologize, Callum. I'll reach out to someone who would know and see if we can find that answer for you.
Yes, I think we'll probably be able to determine.
But be careful with this. There's black, which is what you really should use, or there's white, which is okay if you want it to be bright. The other colors are a little goofy. Like just so you know, like I just want we see other colors, and if you're not a YouTuber, really think hard about that. I mean, if you're not about 25 or below and you're using a colored mic, people are going to feel like you're working too hard. So just so you know, like just think about that before you do it. Mickey also says that colorware is an art department. I guess he says we have an art department that to paint or powder or coat mics. Alternatively, colorware is colorware.com is a place that you might be able to go as well.
Courtney?
Well, I was wondering if that colorware is the company that does the colored lavaliers, because that drives me crazy when I see women with some crazy orange or pink or purple dress, and the lavalier is painted a perfect color to match the dress, including the wire and the windscreen. It's all perfectly the same color. I don't know where they're doing that, or if they're painting those microphones. I think that would ruin the microphone if you're painting it. And then what, do you repaint it the next day when they were
they have there's I can't think of I was on a set where they had them, and they have like 20 of them, and they've been all built, and they look, the ones that they have, I think it's called I can't think of the talk show, but it's a talk show, and they have them, and they all look like little pendants. And they don't always match their thing, but it always looks like they're just wearing a pendant. And sometimes that pendant matches the color that they're in, or sometimes it's complementary, but it's definitely not black or white. And it's and it fits in, and I think it looks really nice. I mean, it's one of the few places where I think it actually works well to color your mic. But when you have a big radio mic, I don't know if I would do that. But on a woman's blouse or whatever, and having something that just looks like a pendant that happens to be a mic, I don't know. I think that's kind of cool. When I saw it, then I had to, when I was there, and they had this 20 of them, and they just picked the one that they want for that day.
I wonder if that hurts its resale value. I wonder if somebody painted a mic the color of Jesse's
I don't think they're worried
background.
About resale.
Yeah, well, you're right. At that level,
you get a hot pink microphone, it's going to be hard to resell.
I don't think that they're worried about that.
Yeah, try to sell it to Mary Kay. Anyway, next question.
Roscoe Jones from Madison, Indiana is asking, what is the advantage of RAW for video recording?
Jesse?
What are the advantages of RAW for video recording? There are a couple. The biggest one that is very unique to RAW is that it saves red, green, and blue values on 3 separate layers, so that when you get into post, you can do a lot more color adjustment than you could in a non-RAW image. So when you're working in JPEG, they take those 3 layers and compress them down into one sheet of information instead of 3 sheets of information. So that's really the biggest benefit of RAW. Another great benefit of RAW is that you have intra-frame compression, and that means that every frame that you shoot is a bespoke frame. There's no relationship between those individual frames, and this really comes into play when you're in post-production, because if you have interframe codec, that is a frame that relies on others for data, for pixel information. When you hit that frame that doesn't have all the data, your computer has to process the frame that does have all the data before and the frame that has all the data after in relation to that frame that doesn't have all the data. And this will bog down your system. Particularly Resolve does not play well with interframe codecs. So between those two benefits, it's kind of like we always go to RAW. Of course, other codecs, other recording formats do intraframe, like ProRes does intraframe, DNXHD. I haven't shot in that one in a while, but there are other recording formats that allow for that. But RAW will guarantee those individual bespoke frames.
Alex.
Yeah, I mean, the big reason I shoot almost everything in RAW. I mean, if I'm shooting something that I care about, that I'm going to do any kind of color correction to, you're going to get much more dynamic range typically from the RAW capture. I'm not sure if it does 3 layers, but it does theoretically, when you get RAW, it is capturing what the Bear processor did, which is technically you do have the 3, but they're not on top of each other, and it hasn't done any processing in the camera, or that's the goal when we call it RAW. Is that it said this is just what the sensor grabbed, and then we can re-evaluate it later. Anytime you're converting to another, so if you're doing ProRes out of a Blackmagic camera, let's say, or an Arri or anything else, it's doing that conversion in the camera, and so you now put a conversion step in the middle. Whereas if we do RAW, theoretically we don't do very many steps or any steps of just capturing that raw data and then being able to process it later.
Yeah, bottom line is you will have more control over the color appearance of your footage if you shoot in RAW than you do in the other formats. And if you use a colorist, they will look at you with horrible scowls if you don't shoot RAW because you're limiting their ability to do their job afterwards. Guy Cochran, you wanted to get in on this?
Yeah, just be aware that you're going to tear through a lot of storage real quick. I shot just a little minute, 40-second piece, and it was 1.5 gigabytes. And I was like, wow, this is monstrous for doing take after take after take. You eat through real quick, and I had to transfer those off of I have the 14 iPhone, and it's painful. But so if you do this, iPhone 15 with the USB-C drive, way to go, because then you can transfer very quickly. Worth it.
Yeah, also remember that there's different kinds of RAW. Alex kind of said raw. The fundamental underlying, the codec is keeping everything, not throwing away anything, not compressing anything raw, is the big files, and they require a lot of storage to back up and the rest of that. There are other forms of RAW, ProRes RAW and other things that have compression in the RAW format, so you get some of the benefits without some of the huge file sizes. So just spend some time doing what you're doing now, which is looking into this, studying it, and figuring out what's the right thing for you. Are you more concerned about preservation of all the color editing options, or are you more concerned with storage? And there are various flavors of RAW that will let you hopefully get the right balance for yourself. Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. Thoughts on the new Sony PXW-Z200 and HXR-NX800 digital camcorders? Is 20x optical zoom enough for ballrooms?
Courtney Gooden, what do you think?
I think so. 20x optical zoom is pretty good. These are what they look like. The two new. They're a captive lens 20x zoom, so you're not going to change them out. There's a good article in American Cinematographer this month on these two cameras, so you can take a look there. They also record in the XDCam format and AVC1 or AVC codec in an XDCam wrapper. They say they will have MXF files, but not till the middle of next year with a firmware update on the 200. It has HDMI and I think a SDI out. I think it has timecode in too, so it could be used in a situation where you need to lock several cameras together using timecode. It'd be good for run and gun ENG news gatherers, maybe low end stringers for the network, etc., or for houses of worship, or for the schools, those type of organizations, and corporate video.
Jesse Kester.
Every piece of equipment on the planet doesn't do something, and 20 times optical zoom feels like it's pretty well in the better side of the bell curve. I think it's fine.
And Guy Cochran.
Yeah, the real interesting thing about this camera is the new AI with the clear image zoom. So this is unlike any other camera out on the market. This is something very, very new. So here's an example of a site called Visual Impact, where they've gone in and you can see it following this lady. So in the bottom right, they've got the large crop level. And when they flip back, you'll be able to see the camera, how it's moving around. So if you're doing a stage and you had multiples of these cameras, you can let it go ahead and do that AI tracking for you. So I would do a little more research if that's the kind of stuff that you're doing, where it's productions where you could go back and cut it, or if you're doing it on the fly, you could begin to trust that large versus medium versus small auto tracking. And again, it's more than just 20x zoom because of the clear image zoom and because of the 4K. If you're doing HD, you have a little bit more wiggle room. You actually have twice as much, so you'd have 40x on HD.
Courtney, you wanted to follow up?
Yeah, another feature it has is an electronic adjustable ND filter, continuously adjustable, or you can set to presets like quarter or 1/28th. Or you can set it in auto, where instead of adjusting iris, it adjusts the ND filter. So you could maintain your wide open iris for shallow depth of field and then handle different lighting conditions by adjusting the ND filter on the fly. Whether it does that by changing the sample rate of the of the pixels, or whether it's actually rotating a continuously variable optical filter in there, polarized filter in there. I'm not sure. If it's doing that, then at least it's not going to change the amount of motion blur you're getting on the back end by changing the sample rate of the sensor.
And having spent a good little bit of my career in Arizona where you get very bright sunlight, ND filters are something I lived and died by all the time. Various forms of ND filters. And for those of you who might not be aware of it, an ND filter just passes all the frequencies and colors of light but stops it down. So it's a different process than just closing your iris, which, as Courtney so eloquently mentioned, changes a lot of other factors in your picture. Let's go to the next question.
Next question's from the QR code. Adrian Albeck in Brisbane is asking, I have a M2 Mac Mini updated to Sonoma, and I am trying to set the screensaver, but 1 minute after the screen goes off, they come back on, wake on LAN is also off.
Jesse Kester?
Check that you have any software running that is pinging anything else anywhere in the world. We ran Blackmagic Cloud, and if we ever left a Blackmagic Cloud timeline open on the computer, it would never get into screensaver mode, and it would never go into sleep mode because it sends this ping that the computer takes as you're actually trying to do something. So it would just be waking up constantly overnight, all day, over weekends when we were out of the office. So just double check that you've got something pinging in the background and see if you can turn that off when you go to let the computer sleep.
Adrian, hopes that helps. Let's go to the next question.
David Brady in New York City, New York is asking, I have a Blackmagic Design SmartScope 4K that's out of warranty that looks to have some cold solder joints issues, oxidation on the PCB. Is this repairable and or cleanable? Alexander, what do you think? Depends on how bad it is, but oftentimes it is. Sometimes we have to do a isopropyl alcohol bath to try to get rid of that stuff. You want to make sure you check all the traces on the circuit board also to make sure nothing is damaged there. But even broken traces on a circuit board with a skilled technician, with the right tools and magnification, you can repair solder joints very methodically and slowly, but it is possible.
Alex?
And Mickey says that if it's cold solder joints and light corrosion, yes, break out the hot air station and the ultrasonic cleaner.
Oh, okay. Sounds like it's possible, David. Good luck. Next question.
A Barrera and Flowery Branch from the QR code is asking, liking to do a 3D scan of a car. Any recommendations for an iPhone app, a free app, or a paid app?
Ooh, big subject. Alex, what do you think?
Yes, the one that I use for just about everything is Polycam. I haven't found one that is more fluid than Polycam. It does cost something. I think it's like $8 a month or $10 a month or something like that, but I use it almost every day. So it's not going to get you it's not going to build a 3D model like what you see in a car ad, but it gives you a rough idea of what's going on. So when I'm using Polycam, I usually use it so that I can measure things later. So I can sit there and go this, and I got kind of a sense of it. But it's not something that I can use in a show. Usually what we do is we use that to rebuild what we're doing with proper 3D. So you're not going to fix, in my opinion, you're not going to have a car that you can use in an animation from Polycam, but you will have information that you could use to build that car or to previs that car or to do something like that. Note that some things that a scanner won't like is reflective surfaces. So if you're better off shooting the car when it's dirty, or you can make it dirty. So if you're trying to shoot a really, really clean car that's really, really shiny, you may not get a lot of information. I just shot something yesterday that had a lot of reflective surfaces, and there's not a lot of usable data there because it's bouncing the light that it's supposed to be coming back, and so it's not a great solution there.
I used to have a client who was a Cadillac dealer, and that was our bête noire. Glass and chrome is really hard to deal with for all things, particularly trying to get the crew out of the bumpers in terms of their reflections. So yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, the PXW-Z200 looks very interesting to me. If you were shooting a walking video, aka slow TV, would you use a Steadicam or would its automatic stabilization work?
Alex Lindsay, what do you think?
The problem with the stabilization in most cameras, it's really good when you're standing somewhere because you're just rotating. And as long as you don't walk, as soon as you start to walk, you start to have this bouncy kind of thing that you're doing. And you don't notice it, but your camera's going up and down like this. And that is not something the camera can correct for you. So you would typically want something that has that Z-axis or Y-axis, depending on how you're setting that up, but it's going up and down. So that's what a Steadicam helps you sort out. Also a lot of skill to do that. But rotational data, and it's only just a little bit of data, you're still going to see that you're walking most likely if you're not using something that's going to stabilize it a little bit more.
Courtney?
Yeah, and I think this lens uses a combination of electronic image stabilization, optical image stabilization with electronic image stabilization. So it uses a combo of both to remove the bounce. And it really depends on how long a lens you're going to try. If you're on the wide end of that lens, then which is 24 millimeters, it should be okay, should be fine. Then it is pretty heavy camera, and like these camcorders, you're holding them out in front of you with your hand. So it's hard to get a stable image when you're holding it out in front of you on your hand. It's easier if something's resting on your shoulder. If you get a shoulder rig for it where it rests on your shoulder and you've got some hand grips out in front, that might be a more stable way to shoot with it if you're just going to go handheld. Otherwise, a gimbal or a Steadicam would work on it too.
And don't forget, your votes determine our programming here on the show every single day. So if you're in the main Mukana system, you can vote these questions up and down. The votes, the questions that get the most votes are the ones we get to quicker and spend the most time talking about. So your votes do matter in that session, although we're very happy to have you come in and use the QR code that has appeared at the beginning of the show for quick voting if you'd like to. In any case, thank you for all of your votes. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, Pod Save America did interview at Dem Convention with Julia Louise Dreyfus using table stand mic, and you could hear her thumping the table. Can this be fixed and still have tabletop mics?
I've heard that so many times. Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I mean, I worked on stuff that's pretty high profile, and when you know that you're going to have a lot of people watching something, usually we put a little more care into the work there. But this was kind of just feels like it was just kind of slopped together. So if you look at this here, you can see just this is a basic tabletop mic with what looks like probably an SM58 most likely, and just kind of it's fine. I mean, it's just that it doesn't feel like they do maybe location stuff very often. And so let's see if we can get to I'm just trying to find a wide shot here so you can kind of, I'll just let it play through here. There we go. So here's the table, pretty, the problem with this table and the problem with the setup in general is, number one is, I mean, this is just it looks like the pipe and drape that came with the convention, which, is, I guess, okay. I mean, I've done stuff at conventions and we usually build out sets that look nice because we know that a lot of people are going to watch it. So a little cheap. If I was going to have pipe and drape, if we just want to do a tear down here for a second, if I was going to do pipe and drape, I would at least, steamers are really great. They're really awesome, and you can buy them for not very much. Conairs cost about $30, and you can fix all these one of my pet peeves is pipe and drape with folds in them because I just know how easy it is to get rid of those. So a lot of cabling. Now, typically what we would do here is, well, there's two things that I would do if I did this again. Number one is I tend to want to build it into the round. So I would tend to put them here and here. Now, I know that they had a lot of other builds here, but I would have tended to do that and put cameras in gaps. It just looks nicer. But the other thing is that one of the things that we do here when we build these tables is we build another piece of a table here. So we build the tabletop custom for what we're doing. And so what we do is we put low profile arms on this centerpiece and swing it out like this, to do it. And what you can do is you can have a bunch of holes in here. You can have lots of holes. We've had some with different patterns that are there for us to use. So it may seem like a lot of work, but once you build it, you simply just move the mic over to where you want it to go, and you'll have a center hole here. Now, here's the key. This tabletop is not attached to this top tabletop. So it is a center column that goes up to the tabletop. It sits just a couple inches above the other tabletop, and it has got a couple inches of air between it and the other table. That means that it's not, the mics aren't attached to a different table. Now you got to make the table maybe a little bit smaller, but I think an arm would reach out to there. So, I mean, in this table, but what we do is we build we build that center column, then all of our cables and everything else go into that. And it's just much nicer to look at, and it also doesn't have any of the pounds. I can't say that I came up with that. I saw it in somebody else's setup, and I thought, "Wow, that's genius." so we started using it after that. It was pointed out that Brian says they're probably using a rental table. Yeah, they probably are using a rental table. If you're Pod Save America at the Democratic National Convention, might want to think about it a little bit more. Like, that's all I'm saying is, like, you've got budget, or you should have budget for that. And they have 384,000 views. I mean, it would have been worth something a little nicer. That's all I'm saying. Like, it's kind of a, it's fine. I mean, they hacked it together, and I'm sure maybe most of the listeners probably don't notice. So it's probably okay.
Alexander Knight.
All good points. Yeah, you want to decouple the mics from the table. I don't know what was going through their heads, but maybe they just thought it wasn't even necessarily about money. They figured, well, if we're only going to be using it for this event, why are we going to spend money to custom build a table and spend, you'd have to plan that ahead of time. And
when we custom build those tables, we pay for shipping after that, but we don't get rid of the tables. It's too much work. The table's a lot of money. Right. So we ship it around after that. And that's what we've used for other clients. And so you're not building it once, although, I come from film where we spend a lot of money on a set and then just tear it down. So.
Yeah, for sure. But low profile mic arms, even if you had a low profile mic arm, like a cheap one, like an Elgato mounted to the side, that wouldn't totally get rid of it because it's still physically making contact with the table. But that would have been better. I just don't like those tabletop mic stands. There's just too many problems with that. And of course, putting the microphone in some kind of suspended shock mount would help minimize that as well. Another thing, and this is not necessarily with the sound, but I don't know about how everybody else feels, but it's a pet peeve of mine. It kind of bothers me seeing people's legs under the table with the wires. I would have probably built some kind of enclosure or wrap around the table. I just don't like seeing people's legs with wires there. It looks kind of amateur to me.
Courtney.
Well, they should have invested, in something that Shure makes. We saw yesterday the microphone that we looked at yesterday comes with it. The A53M shock stopper. This is designed for specifically eliminating table thumpings. The interior ring, it's like a little rubber inner tube in here that holds the microphone, and it shock stops a lot of that low frequency noise before it gets to the microphone, so it doesn't conduct itself up through the microphone. The heavy weight of the base plate of that mic stand conducts all the shocks on the table right up into the microphone unless you stop them on the way. And something like those $40 shock stoppers would probably have helped quite a bit in the thumping table.
Jesse, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, we all know that these conventions are very fluid events where things are changing. Nothing is set in stone, and suddenly you're told, we have Julia for the next 45 minutes. Get it together right now. So shout out to all the back-end teams who put together these builds just to be on office hours getting ruthlessly reviewed.
I will say I worked at the Democratic National Convention twice. So those sets, like Julia Dreyfus was if you look at it, they're interviewing lots of people, and the space that they had was probably allocated at least 3 months ago. It was, for the stuff that's there is little to no excuse in a convention. I'm not saying in general, but in a convention, we're in meetings and walkthroughs, and and I did both the Republican National, by the way, RNC and TNC in 2012 and 2016, and and in the DNC and RNC in 2016, we had 5 sets, different sets that were there. But all of them were, there was endless meetings and endless process and endless things that, and that doesn't get into the security and all the other bits and pieces. And so the thing is that, and again, my pet peeve is that we would put a lot of work into these things, and then folks, podcasters and YouTubers would come in and not put any work into it, and it just makes them look cheap. It cheapens their brand when it looks like they kind of hacked it together. Maybe that's their look, so maybe that's it. But I just feel like, I wouldn't, if I had the opportunity to getting a space in the Democratic National Convention or Republican National Convention, it's a big deal. Like it is not like there's security and costs and all kinds of big things for you to get that space. And I feel like it's disrespectful to the conference to not take it seriously and spend the proper time and money on it. That's all. I mean, and again, as someone who's spent a lot of time at these things, I get a little edgy because I just feel like, and this is a very common thing, that people just kind of brought a table and put up some pipe and drape and hung some stuff, kind of randomly on the thing and said, okay, well, this is what we're doing. And it didn't have to be that way. That's all. so anyway, sorry for me being, it's particularly rough with this one, but it's a big podcast. They have budget, and they just put up a cheap little set that cost them almost nothing. It was just,
From my point of view, somebody didn't in the rehearsal say, drink from your coffee. Thump the table. Let's see what it sounds like. And if it sounds bad, you go get 3 mic stands and boom arms and you get it off the table.
They wouldn't have been able to fix it at that point. Like, I just think that they, once
not when
there,
she's coming in. I'm saying beforehand in the rehearsal, is somebody acting there and acting like the real person acts, not sitting there with their arms folded and talking into the microphone perfectly, but putting their hands on the table, putting a coffee cup down to see if it gets into the mic system. That we used to do that as just kind of 101 stuff.
I will say that as someone who's worked in a convention, it's very hard to fix once you're there. Like, so if you didn't think of it ahead of time, there's very few places to go to fix it because everything gets cleared out. Like, we literally in the Republican National Convention in 2012, we went to get some speaker cables, and some truck hadn't showed up for CNN, so they went to Guitar Center and bought all of them. And I said, all of them? He said, all of them. Or not speaker cables. We were going to get XLRs. They had bought all the audio cables from Guitar Center because a truck hadn't shown up and they didn't know what they needed. They just bought them all, and so that's the kind of stuff that happens once you get there.
Next question.
Next one's from the QR code. Paul Kovacs in Elkhart, Indiana is asking, basic 101 question. Have an Atem Mini Pro that will not connect via Ethernet, only USB. Not a cable/network problem since a Mini Pro Extreme sitting next to me. It works fine. Even using the same cable. Tried the usual troubleshooting, updates, etc. Thanks.
Alexander, do you have any thoughts for them?
Well, the first thing that I would check is to ensure in your Atem software control setup that you have the manage by Ethernet option turned on, and then also ensure that you didn't set it to a manual static IP address. I would try just the automatic DHCP, let it get its IP address automatically, have that assigned by your router. Those are the first things that I would do. If it still doesn't work, you may want to try a reset as well. There's a key combination that you have to hold on the Atem. I don't recall what that is exactly, but if you Google it, you'll find that answer. Try that and see if that fixes it. And if it doesn't, you may want to contact Blackmagic support.
Jesse Kester.
And also something else we've tried. There have been times when we plugged our Atem directly into a computer via Ethernet, and it didn't catch right away. And then we took the same Atem and plugged it into the wireless router, into the Ethernet of the wireless router. And then the Atem software did recognize it, and sometimes, just a quick shutdown of everything and a restart can sometimes kind of knock it over that edge of the finish line.
Next question.
Another QR code question from Anawahi Black Bear Marshall in Oahe. Heard someone here say you can use NDI for KVM control on some computer devices. Is that true? How do you do it?
Guy Cochran, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. The way it works is on the machine that you want to control, you need to enable screen capture. So in the NDI tool app that you can download, you just would launch screen capture on that machine. And what you get, it'll look like nothing happens, but down in the bottom system tray, and I know this stuff is really small, but you're just going to have to open up that little blue icon that looks the same with a right click, and you're going to say enable KVM control. Once that's enabled on the other computer, you go into Studio Monitor. And in Studio Monitor, you'll have this little KVM. Actually, let me jump to a computer that actually has it. So here's this computer here, and then you'll enable KVM in the top left here. Once you click that, then you can fully control, move around a timeline or whatever you want to do on a remote computer. So it's two things: screen capture on the computer that you want to control, and then studio monitor on the machine that you want to do the control with. And then it's clicking that little KVM button.
Great. Next question.
David Paskin in Miami, Florida is asking thoughts on the new structuring of Zoom events, including Zoom Webinar for up to 1 million participants.
That's pretty impressive. Alex, what do you think?
It's exciting. So, I think that, there's been a dream of doing 1 million people in a Zoom event for quite some time. We're already starting to see some of the politicians getting into the hundreds of thousands. And, I think that this is going to keep on underlining that scale, as this starts to scale up and as it gets easier and easier to do larger numbers, I think that you're going to see just more online events. So we saw a lurch towards online events during COVID, pull back a little bit after COVID. But now I think that the sheer math makes it hard not to do more and more events online, because it may be, I don't know what the cost is of doing 1 million participants on Zoom. I don't know what they're going to charge you to do that, but it'll be a lot less than having 1 million people come to a location or any group of locations. And so being able to do that now, I think that obviously what's still missing for a lot of people is getting the quality to make it worth going to 1 million people. So the temptation that they're going to have is to do an event and then still have people come in on their webcams and their internal mics. And I just, so hopefully we can, that's what we're here to do, is try to push people forward to, hey, if you're going to do this in front of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, you might want to spend a little time and effort on your setups, and so hopefully people are realizing that comes with that scale. One thing I'm really interested in to find out, this was just announced 2 days ago, I think, is I'm interested to find out how they handle breakout rooms and all the other things. Because one of the reasons that someone like Tony Robbins uses so many rooms is not just for the number of people they're trying to put into them, but whether they can get to paired sharing or sharing with groups of 5 or other things like that. It's the subdivision of the breakout rooms. And I don't know what that looks like here, but that would be another thing to kind of consider, because that's important to a lot of folks that are doing these kinds of things.
And I just want to reinforce my experience. I mentioned this the other day, but I was in the other room doing voiceover stuff, and my wife came in and said, have you seen the roll call that they're doing at the DNC convention? And I said, no. And she said, come look at this. And I walked in there, and they had turned it into kind of a disco thing. But what really impressed me is that when the TV cut to commercial, she found it on Instagram because she wanted to continue watching the actual content, how they were doing that roll call gag with the DJ and the rest of that, rather than watch the commercial. And for the next period of time, we stayed on Instagram rather than watching broadcast television. First time that's happened to me, that I was pushed away from broadcast into online and wanted to stay there because the actual experience of watching something that we wanted to watch right at that moment was better than television. And that says a lot.
And by the way, John Wallace said that Tony has a requirement to keep all cameras on. And I realized when he said that, that this is a webinar, so it may also assume that you're not going to breakout rooms. I mean, webinars, I think, now have them, but it's not going to breakout rooms, and it's more going into you're broadcasting one to many at a very low latency, which would be incredibly expensive. So I can't, for Zoom. So I'm very curious how much it would cost to do something for 1 million people. So we'll try to suss out some of that. By the way, I did reach out to Laura Davidson related to the mic question, and she said that the MV7, MV7 Plus, MV7X, SM7Bs, SM7DB, SM58, and SM58S can be customized by a very cool company called Colorware, which is what Mickey had mentioned. The new SM4 is not able to be customized yet, but the Colorware can do one-off customization if you ask. So there you go.
There you go. Next question.
Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York is asking, client has a couple of Sony Z280 camcorders with broken SDI BNC pins. Easy to fix, or will a board need to be replaced by Sony service?
Courtney, what do you think?
Well, I definitely wouldn't attempt this myself. I wouldn't attempt to repair any camera, because if you've ever opened them up, they're like everything is crammed in there so tight with a lot of flexible circuit boards and interconnects. I would not try and go in there. If you take a look at the back of this Sony, if it's this connector here, it may be an issue. What may happen is inside this, there may be a subboard, a daughter board that just has all of these connectors attached to it, and then probably a flexible circuit board or flexible cable that connects that to the main board. If that's the case, it could be a fairly inexpensive, maybe $200 or $300 expensive replacement at a Sony authorized dealer, because they'd just have to replace that daughter board, and they'd probably have to replace all 3 or 4 of those connectors, including the Ethernet connector. So it's probably a sub-assembly that they would have to replace. I would not go and try and resolder a connector in there if one of those BNCs is broken. They'd probably want to replace that daughter board assembly, and hopefully it's not attached to the main board.
Alex?
Hot off the presses. I know I'm taking a set. This is only 3 minutes old. So DaVinci Resolve 19 has been released. I just got the announcement, just showed up. I just thought it would be fun to do it. Like we don't get to
breaking news. We need a graphic.
Yeah, I'll read the announcement.
Just handed to me.
We don't have any opinions about it yet, so don't ask. But DaVinci Resolve 19 is a major new update that adds new DaVinci Neural Engine AI tools, over 100 feature upgrades, such as IntelliTrack AI, Ultra NR noise reduction, color slice, 6-vector grading, film look. There's a lot of lists there for Fusion. There are also new USD tools and multi-poly rotoscoping tools, plus Fairlight and new Fairlight AI. Audio panning for surround. Blackmagic Cloud has new features that make it easy to use for large companies and multiple users collaborating on the same project at the same time. With this update, editors can work directly with transcribed audio to find speakers and edit timeline clips. Colors can produce rich film-like tones with color slice 6-vector palette. Just kind of skipping through this because it's a little long and a little wordy. But anyway, but if you're into Resolve, it is, and you want to look at it, the new 19 has just been released, and I thought it'd be fun to announce, given that I got the email while we were on the show, and we've done it 4 minutes later. You now know. So there you go.
There you go. Breaking news. Next question.
From the QR code, Gene J. Anthony in Skokie, Illinois is asking, content aside, who has best coverage of the Democrats show this week? C-SPAN has some glitches, Fox Business had best sound and video, but not graphics info. Fox News had great video, but hissy sound, and there's everybody else too. Why so much difference?
Alex, what do you think?
They're all different companies, and they all have their own opinions about how to do this. So typically, the feeds that are coming from or at least they have access to feeds that are coming from the pull feed. So there's a hand, someone is usually given the responsibility to cover the event, or they're being handed something by the conference. If it gets too complicated, it's been a pretty complicated conference. But then all these sit downs, all those roundtables, that's not done by the convention. That's done by the individuals, and it's what they've decided is important. And how much pre-pro they've done is what it shows you for each one of those. But it's an independent. Each one of those is independent as they work through it.
And my only comment has been, I think they really have, whoever's doing whatever, the show producers themselves have cracked the code a little bit about making something that used to be dull. All the conventions to me used to be pretty dull. They've made this one pretty interesting. The emotional content they've paid attention to has been working as far as I can see. And so I think they've raised the bar. It used to be, unless you were seriously involved in politics, these shows were not fun to watch. It has been more fun. My wife, I know, has been enjoying this for the first time that she's enjoyed one of these in a long time, and keeps saying, wow, they did a really nice job with this or that in terms of the content. So I think they're going to raise the bar. They're trying to compete with everybody else's eyeballs, and they're putting a lot of investment into making it a decent show as a show, regardless of the content. So that's worth paying attention to. Next question.
Next question's from the QR code. Marielle Jusha, Miera, and Wablo is asking, Mickey, Jeff, Laura, and the panel, what in-ears were Snoop and Dre using on the beach for the Olympics, and how did it work with the wireless? They look different from the ones everyone else was wearing. Simple, small, and black. Thanks, peeps.
Well, in most of the cases for those individual IFBs, the drivers can be whatever you particularly like, and then you send them out, and the in-ear ear molds are custom made for each person. So each artist can go into that system and say, I want a bejeweled black in-ear monitor because that's the style of my dress or my outfit or whatever. Customization at that level is you can get exactly the drivers you want, exactly the ear molds you want, and have it be part of your personal kit. And I think that's what they all do. Alex, you have more intelligence?
Yeah, Mickey said that JH is probably a good guess as far as what they Jerry Harvey Audio. So this is let's see if I can pull it up here. This is these are the ones that make a lot of custom inserts here, or custom in-ear monitors, and so jhaudio.com. And I have it under head amp, but yeah, it's jhaudio.com.
There you go. Next question.
Next one's from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Oh my, comment on the look on the face of Matt, the AV tech from Nevada when the equipment fails. There's a link to Reddit there.
Jesse Kester?
The first thing you learn when you're trying to pull a thumbnail from a YouTube video is that the ratio is maybe 1 out of every 1,000 frames from that video looks not terrible. Like, you can pull a still frame of anybody talking or anybody singing, and it just looks bad with a capital bad. We've all been there. This is, yeah. I would rather not have that version of my face broadcasted, and but it's not the death of a career at all.
I've had to do this a few times, and to take a still frame of a person off of video when they're in motion, and even if it's clear, and pick anything other than something that makes them look stupid, has been one of the biggest battles of my life. I've done it for myself when I've had to try to take a selfie. Somebody's asked me for, hey, give me a headshot, and I'm going, well, that video looked really pretty decent, so let me see if I can get one. Take me 15 minutes to find something that I thought looked good for myself, so it's funny that way. Alex?
Again, as someone who's brought video into a screen at a convention, and if this actually was an equipment fail, it's probably because they had the person doing it by themselves or with their assistant. When we did it, we sent people to every location that was going to show up there, and there was a crew and a camera, and they were on comms, and we were bringing them in. If you're going to put them in, I don't know what happened here, but if you're going to put them on a large environment where millions of people are watching, again, a little more care would be useful.
Yeah. I think that was the thing where Kenan Thompson was doing the on-stage work for a moment, and he could handle it as well as anybody because he does Saturday Night Live every time, and he doesn't get frustrated when things don't
he
work.
Does. So. I'm just saying, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what he did. I'm just saying that
No.
If you're bringing people in, I mean, you did know that you were going to do that. It's not like they decided to do it in the last week.
Yeah. So. Next question.
Next question is from the QR code Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. I have some Momentum 4 wireless headphones and was wondering, how do they compare to Sony and Apple and AKG and Audio-Technica for playing back Logic Pro music, AAC music?
Alex?
It depends. So, I mean, if you're, I guess what I would say is that as soon as you start doing wireless, you're saying, I don't really care that much about the music. I mean, it's not, you're not going to hear the best rendition of that music there. These are pretty good. These are Sennheiser mics, and Sennheiser headsets, and they're fairly good to do that. And so are the Apple and the Sonys and the AKGs, but they're all wireless, and they will sound better when they're wired, or they won't compete usually with a wired, a high quality or even a significantly less expensive wired one will sound better than a really expensive wireless one in general.
Alexander?
Yeah, I'll fully support that. It's fine using wireless if you want to check how your mixer is going to translate in a pair of consumer headphones like the one that you have here. That's totally fine. That's a valid way to do it. But yeah, mixing music on wireless headphones, or even worse, trying to track with the additional latency through Bluetooth and that compressed sound. No, if you care about sound quality, don't use wireless. Now, all those brands, they do have higher end headphones designed specifically for mixing reference headphones. I use a pair of open back headphones from Audio-Technica called the ATH. It's the R70X. That's their higher end open back headphones. They sound phenomenal. So something like that for doing critical listening and making important decisions.
Let's go to one more question.
Jason Robert Shaw in Sarasota, Florida is asking, the Speed Bench Mobile Workstation from Ryobi looks like it might be useful for production. Anyone tried this contraption?
I love it when you find something in one area that you can repurpose into production. Alex, what do you think of this?
Using power saws on something that naturally folds up on itself. What could possibly go wrong? So I mean, I don't know if I might use it for production. There's no way I would use it. There's pictures of it of people like with a power saw sitting on it. I was like, no way would I do that. Like under any circumstances would I use a power saw on something that is designed to fold.
Courtney.
Yeah, if you look at it too, also it has a flat table on top of it. If you're going to use it for production, you're going to stack stuff on top of it. To move it around, you've got to tilt it to back on its wheels to move it, which means everything's going to slide off that table. So there's nothing to contain your equipment on top of that table, so it's dangerous.
Alexander?
It doesn't look that big, but I didn't see, does that thing have brakes? What if that table starts moving as you're trying to use a buzzsaw? I mean,
not a good idea. But no.
Safety
not
first.
A good idea.
Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. And don't forget, we are truly appreciative of everybody who involved in making this show happen every day, particularly the constituencies that make this happen, to all of our producers for asking the questions that make this show what it is. Thank you so much for taking your time to put it in. By the way, if one of your questions is the one that we didn't have time for today, it'll get sent back to you. So please bring them back tomorrow if they're not naturally already brought back into the show, and we will try to get to them then. For everybody who is on the panel, thank you so much for showing up here and adding your expertise to office hours. This show does not happen without all of you as volunteers, and we truly appreciate your effort. And, of course, to the amazing back-end crew who sit quietly at computers all around this planet and help us make this show happen every day. We are truly appreciative of all of your skill and work. We have some amazing back-end tech crew people, and they're at the top of this industry, and we really appreciate having them there. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
This week in AV curmudgeon. Sorry. I would be sitting, we had a lot of infrastructure at some of these conventions, and you'd watch these guys come in, and then you're just like, it just was so, I don't know.
Yeah. Alex, can we do a power hour of all the things we hate? Just like hate on a bunch of things.
I'm thinking of moving from Pixel Core's teardown to moving it over to office hours and start doing teardowns again, just to embarrass people into a better quality. I think that might be the only way we can move it forward, is just to threaten that they'll be on YouTube being ridiculed. Ridicule and shame. That's one way to move things forward. All right.
Happy trails.
Thanks, everybody.